ARRA was a jumpstart idea that, for the first time, had included a transportation investment, and the transportation investment was on the order of $52 billion, and that was a relatively small piece out of what was about an $800 billion legislation. ARRA was somewhere around $800 billion. But within the transportation investment was something called a high-speed rail program. And what happened, and you can go online and find the speeches and the moment of this vision being put on the table. The president and the vice president had a press conference, and they announced that as part of ARRA, they were going to invest $8 billion to create a national network of high-speed rail corridors. And they did that in a very kind of remarkable presentation. They said things like 85% of the American public should be within commuting area of a high-speed rail station. They were very principled and very high-minded, and they talked about the European progress made on high-speed rail, and that in the United States we should do similar things. They put into the ARRA $8 billion. $8 billion is a lot of money, considering that the previous amount invested in high-speed rail was $0. So one could only conclude that $8 billion was a fine beginning. In the 2010 budget, $1.5 billion was added to the program. So we had $9.5 billion of federal money that was specifically slated for high-speed rail. Of course, we have to now figure out what really is high-speed rail. The Federal Railroad Administration, which had no program and no program capability at the time, created an invitation for submission of applications, provided criteria, and in an enormously fast way for a federal agency to react, provided the ability of states, regional agencies, multi-state agencies to apply for these $8 billion. And this process of application and selection was very controversial. In the United States at the time, there were two projects that one could consider high-speed rail. One was in California, and the other one was in Florida. And other than that, there were a lot of intercity passenger rail concepts and ideas for improvements, but no real local or regional or statewide work on a classic high-speed intercity passenger rail line. So I'm going to differentiate between the goal of 200-mile-an-hour service, which we see as part of the European high-speed rail network, and the goal of improving intercity passenger rail services in the United States, which could mean that tomorrow, when we finish our investment, the trains will go faster, not as fast as 200 miles an hour, just faster. And so of the $53 billion in applications, only the Florida and California projects had objectives to go to 200 miles an hour. The others were all either planning or investments to improve current speeds on intercity passenger rail services throughout the United States. The Federal Railroad Administration, in its wisdom, made choices about which projects to select and announced that the projects that they selected would be funded. So it was the first step in the actual obligation of those funds. Then we had a series of political setbacks. In 3 states, Ohio, Wisconsin, and Florida, the governors, newly elected, turned down the money. They said to the FRA, they said to Washington, they said to the administration, we don't want these projects, these high-speed rail projects. In Ohio, it was a project to knit together the state with new passenger services, with modest speeds, not really more than 79 miles an hour. In Florida, it was a high-speed network that was going to be begun from Tampa to Orlando and then eventually down to Miami. And the project that was really in an advanced state of environmental agreement was Tampa to Orlando, and that was what was turned down by the governor. And in Wisconsin, the project that had been agreed to by FRA was between Milwaukee and Madison. So these 3 political acts of turning down the money would be
Hey Stan, this is Scott. It appears as if we lost your audio.
okay. You can hear me now. Is that right?
Yep, we hear you fine now.
Okay. I was in the middle of talking about the reallocation of money. Is that right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. So with the Ohio, Wisconsin, and Florida turnbacks, the 2 major beneficiaries were the California project and recognition of the Northeast Corridor as a significant recipient of ARRA funds. Over $3 billion to the California project, over $1.3 billion to the Northeast Corridor to provide some improvements to the corridor to speed it, to add some speed to it, to begin improving the corridor, particularly in New Jersey, where the electrification system needed replacement, and there was a good possibility of bringing train speeds up to over 165 miles an hour. The California project, of course, is now the only high-speed, classical high-speed rail project in the nation. It's been priced at about $68 billion. The state of California, through a plebiscite, has put $9.5 billion into the project, and the federal $3 billion will help initiate the first infrastructure construction program for the California project in what is called the Central Valley, in between Bakersfield and Modesto, California, in the valley. We can talk about the California project for a long time, but that's enough said. The federal dollars will help launch the project and get it started and provide for the beginning of a project where a high portion of that project is yet to be funded with funding completely unknown. But again, the ARRA funds precipitating the beginning of the project, providing money to Amtrak for the Northeast Corridor, and dozens of other projects across the country. That project set that represents the $9.5 billion provided by ARRA and the 2010 budget has become and had become a very controversial in the creation of this list of projects. From the FRA's point of view, they selected a series of projects across the country that really focused on the 10 high-speed rail corridors, and in some cases put money in the ground, and in other cases set the planning stage for making decisions about what money to put in the ground. And the best example of a project that really has very achievable results is the project between St. Louis and Chicago. In that case, the state of Illinois, in cooperation with the state of Missouri, is attempting to move the track speed up to 110 miles an hour for passenger trains. In that case, the freight railroad had to be a party to a very detailed agreement about how those passenger trains would occupy their space, how many of them would occupy their space, and what impact they would have on the freight railroad operations. This project between Chicago and St. Louis is going to have no special track for the high-speed trains, and the trains will go, for the most part, 110 miles an hour when the money that has been allocated by the states and by the ARRA has been completed. There is now a portion of that line operating at 110 miles an hour since they finished the first segment. Another example of monies that were well spent and created improved intercity service is in the state of Vermont, where ARRA money was used to provide congestion relief, a new path for the Montrealer, which is now the Vermonter, and a higher speed for the passenger trains, cutting off a good number of hours from the overall trip. But the naysayers who looked at these allocations of funds, they contended that this is no high-speed rail program, that the high-speed rail name belied the fact that the federal investments were scattered across the country, not focused on any specific project, and will not result in a high-speed rail operation anywhere. So these are two views of the use of these funds. One, that a platform upon which to build a network has been established, and two, that the money has been wasted by being scattered all over the place and not actually resulting in any high-speed rail service. The high-speed rail name itself became a red flag and became a source of mockery for the program because of the lack of high-speed rail projects. And here we have an international community that defines high-speed rail in one way, and that is a train that's going over 200 or over 186 miles an hour, say 300 kilometers an hour. And then the American way which is high-speed rail means trains will go faster tomorrow than they did today. So it is a significant problem for the phrase high-speed rail, and we have seen in recent days more and more, even in FRA Administrator Szabo and the Secretary of Transportation's, at least the previous Secretary, Ray LaHood, they have started to talk about high-performance rail. And by this they mean better performing. And if I would define high-performance rail, I would say that it's a network of intercity passenger rail services that are performing certainly a lot better than they are today or yesterday, and their speed or travel time objectives have been set locally. They've been set by the sponsors of the projects at the state and regional level, not by the federal government saying everyone has to be at a certain speed. So high-performance rail is perhaps today's term of art, and it has been used more and more in discussions about intercity passenger rail. But again, a reminder, ARRA with its $8 billion plus the 2010 budget amounts were the only significant funds crafted for intercity passenger rail in American history, other than the Northeast Corridor and the funds that a reluctant Congress gives Amtrak each year.